Did you read about what DeepSeek just was able to do?
No, I've been in meetings all morning. Like what? Fill me in.
Okay, so everybody's kind of aware that DeepSeek came out, has a different architecture called Mixture of Experts model, and they trained it in a different way. This has been used by NVIDIA now, where they took DeepSeek R1 and they added an almost like an agent on top of it. And the agent's job is to look at DeepSeek's response and just verify, hey, did this work? And what you can think of it as being is like they gave the agent an internal thought process. And it was able to write code for NVIDIA, the people that make all the GPUs, that actually was able to make what's called the kernel. So like kind of the core development layer of how GPUs work. It gave them 100% numerical correction and speed up on those devices, which basically means AI just made every GPU faster. And that is the kind of thing that when you see AI agents
you said
able to do
100%?
that. Well, I got to dig in. That's what's being claimed on this NVIDIA developer blog. And so I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of, over the next couple of days as people go through the data, they're going to look at it. But it appears that there's been significant algorithmic improvement through this process of the computer self-coding. So yeah, this is what exponential looks like. This is when people talk about AI takeoff. This is what they mean is, hey, there were engineers that were given these AI tools and that makes those engineers better. Well, now, even without the engineer, you've got models that are able to create something that was better than everybody at NVIDIA had already made.
It's crazy. Our friend John this week was talking about how, a year ago, like OpenAI's kind of like coding assistant was in the top, like maybe millionth best engineer, and now it's like the 130th best. And by the end of the year, that will be the best, is what they're claiming. But like exponential is like our brains weren't built for it, right? So in like 12 months to go from like, it's like the millionth best engineer to like 130th, right? And then by the end of the year, it'll be the best. Like it'll be better than any engineer on the planet. Like that's like you talk about takeoff. I mean, we talk about this a lot. Like we geek out on this shit a lot. And then we go and hang out with our families and our friends and nobody's really paying attention to AI yet. Right. And then something like today, like this type of breakthrough will happen. And you look around, you're like, oh my God, isn't this amazing? And everybody's like, I don't know, I'm not really paying attention. Right.
Yeah, a whole new world's being created. Like you've got to imagine that, for most of the world population, like they didn't really realize when like people started moving to America or started, like there's all sorts of things where you could kind of be cordoned off from the advances that are taking place, only to find out later, like, oh crap, I could have participated in this. I guess that's why there's alpha groups and stuff like that. People are trying to find out what's happening so they can be a part of it. That's what's happening right now is like literally an entire new reality is being created. And one strategy for that is just put your head in the sand like an ostrich and pretend like nothing's changing. That is one path. I think right now, though, like literally we're getting superpowers. So like the people who actually get to be a part of this are about to upgrade every part of themselves and what they're capable of. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, man. And the pace, like, again, our friend of ours we were talking to, he's like, in the last week, he's like, if you guys just understood, like, I'm not an engineer. I mean, Mike, you don't understand the engineering side way better than I do. But our friend of ours who's very knowledgeable about this stuff just said, you don't understand, just in the last week, what's happening as an engineer, as far as tool sets for engineers. Like, I can achieve things that used to take a team of 20 people now by myself in hours. Like, that's a course of a week. Right. So like time is getting compressed like crazy right now.
And so you have these new AI models, like you were saying at the beginning, they are performing at the level that only a couple hundred people in the world are capable of doing. So like imagine like if you had an AI robot that all of a sudden was like in the NFL playing in the Super Bowl and was getting, MVP.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about.
And it was doing your dishes last week. Right. To make a leap like that, like an evolutionary, like progressive like move that fast in 7 days is bonkers. Also, the fact that DeepSeek, like you should talk about DeepSeek for the folks who don't know what that is. Like it'd be one thing if you said, Google had this breakthrough, right? Or even OpenAI had this breakthrough. But the fact that NVIDIA had it with DeepSeek is crazy. Like, will you kind of set up what DeepSeek is for folks that don't know what that means?
Yeah, so DeepSeek is a fully open weight model, of which we've talked a lot about open source. Open source doesn't mean open weight, and so open weight is like it's all the details. It's like showing all your math work on the homework, so that you can actually like trace back and see how it works, and people can build more things on top of it. DeepSeek got released, I don't know, something like 3-4 weeks ago. It was a massive amount of news at the time because a hedge fund,
tanked the stock market.
Yeah, a quantitative trading firm in China released this model that can run as performant as like a ChatGPT model for like 1/100th of the cost. So like it literally took the cost of doing AI inference down 100x, which is just completely transformative. Like imagine anything else, like a car going down in value by 100x, or food, right? Like you would expect to see the whole economy adapt to that, and that's literally what's happening right now. Is everybody's like, oh wow, now that this is 100 times cheaper, which also means faster and more local, everybody's looking at their product roadmaps and they're like, oh, we can actually do a lot of this stuff on the local machine or on the phone that previously we would have had to do on a GPU at a big place. And then we can also use those GPUs at a big place to do even larger workloads, like what NVIDIA was just showing here. Like the whole game is changing every few weeks. And if you really think about it, like, okay, if the game's changing every few weeks, what becomes valuable? The network is what becomes valuable. And so if we're in a world where each one of us has access to an AI agent that's one of the best coders in the world, how many products do you think can come out of an open source network like Think Agents? Like, let's just talk about that for a second. Like, what would you expect to happen?
Oh God, I don't even know. I mean, I'm working on the documentation stuff. Like, do you want me to set, like, what if I read like the premise of some of the documentation that's coming out? Because I think that would kind of set this up.
Yeah.
Available. Okay, so here's kind of our thesis, right? And I'll cover this. And again, we're going to be, releasing all this, but kind of the thesis is that intelligence gets personal. So we believe that your personal agent will be your primary interface to the post-human internet. Post-human internet is something we definitely got to double click on. The next era of the internet is agent scale, a hyperspeed autonomous web where AI agents interact, transact, and build in real time. The internet will no longer be a tool humans use. It will be a living network of AI agents acting on your behalf, optimizing decisions, automating workflows, and unlocking intelligence beyond human bandwidth. This is the post-human internet, not because humans disappear, but because we are no longer the bottleneck. Your personal AI agent will operate and advocate on your behalf, navigating an exponential network where agent-to-agent interactions happen at a complexity and velocity that exceeds human capacity. Just as Web 2 browsers.
Let's make this real. Let's make this real right now, because I think for a lot of people these are a lot of ideas.
Yeah, but I'm about to wrap it up. Let me just read the closing statement. All right. So just as Web 2 browsers unlock the open web and ERC20 standards tokenized assets, Think Agent Protocol establishes a foundational standard for an open AI economy where agents are tokenized, composable, and permissionless. In the post-human internet, your personal agent is more than a tool. It's your partner guiding you beyond human limits.
Yeah. So what we basically are getting at there is, hey, if I want to interact in an intelligence age world where things are moving as fast as what we're talking about, every week things are changing, and these AI agents are transacting, at essentially the speed of electrons moving, you actually need to have an agent that understands you, knows your goals and objectives, can help you keep your data safe and protected, and can be looking out for you. And we're calling that an AI agent. Is that right?
100%. Well, a personalized data. I mean, that's what we're trying to really, really nail is like, it's not just about, having access to agents. The kind of the user interface for the internet moving forward will be a personal agent. right? That connects you with all the other services you need.
So if my iPhone is my portal to the mobile internet, which was a big
It's your
deal, right?
personal device, right? So if the iPhone is your personal device, in the same way that connects you to the world, right? Your personal agent is going to do something very similar.
So as everybody's been hearing us talk about professional agents, the only way to access a professional agent is like the way that most people will choose to do this is through their personal agent, because their personal agent can understand the capabilities of the professional agents. Like, let's say that they want them to go like code an app for them, or they want that agent to go set up a flight, or they want that agent to go buy a cryptocurrency. Your personal agent can know your preferences and can work with the other agents to actually accomplish the thing on your behalf.
And it has memories. So it can remember the context that you specifically tried to build it for, right? And because you custody that data and because you own that agent, you don't have to worry about the rents going up, right? Because if you're using like OpenAI's agent to do things, you're borrowing or renting somebody else's agent. What happens when they change the pricing? What happens when they change the like standards, right? Because we've already seen this with OpenAI, Mike. Like what their top model was, what, $30 a couple months ago. Now it's 200, right? Well, what happens
Yep.
when you're borrowing someone's agent and the rents go up? What you want to do is have a personal agent that interacts for you on your behalf.
Absolutely. And this is all happening. And one of the cool things was I was talking with some of the main contributors at Morpheus right now, and they're building a series of agents. And as we actually like just look at the architecture of it, and shared with this individual hadn't been part of kind of the Think standards before. When I walked through with him this morning, and I was like, hey, we're going to use these NFTs that we call a soul token, and we're going to authenticate against that. And here's kind of the spec for it. He looks at that immediately. He's like, okay, I can just bring all my agents over here into the Think network now. And so like, it's literally that simple, is because we've got the standards in place, and because everybody's kind of building in the same environment and has similar ethos, these pieces all actually just connect together like Lego blocks.
Mm-hmm. And that's important because like Mike, will you know how to explain, like give like almost a use case for a personal agent? So you're like, whatever, I'm doing my taxes, or I have this thing, and can you explain how that personal agent will go out and almost like broker all the relationships for you? It's kind of like what John calls like Tinder for agents. Can you kind of explain almost that intermediary, how it acts as an intermediary for that?
Yeah. So one of the agents that is being integrated right now is like an expert crypto analyst. That crypto analyst has access to a bunch of public and private resources about markets, how different protocols work, and that agent is really good at understanding like how things work. But that agent might not be the best at understanding like when the right time to buy is. So you might actually have a separate agent that's a strategic trader, and you might have a third one that's a manager, and you might have a fourth one that is communicating with LPs or something like that. Let's say. Now those, as a human, you don't have to know that there's a team of 5 agents working together. All you have to know is that your personal agent is going out to the network, and kind of like Google's saying like, hey, here's the right website for you to go to. That agent is going out and getting a response from that group of traders, and giving you its recommendation on how you could trade along with them. That's an example.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody's built that, right? Like permissionlessly, like that exists. If somebody wanted to use it, they can, because it's all standards and it's compliant.
Yep. Yep, totally. And so with the standards, what I like is like we've talked to a lot of really like kind of elite engineers that are like, I've built agents, but I don't know, I don't like doing marketing, I don't like doing branding, anything like that. Well, now if your agent is a part of the thing standard, it can just go out and find your agent. And if that agent has fees associated with it, you get that for just creating, it's an actual meritocracy around technology. So it's like, oh, your agent was the best at doing that thing, so it got used, you got the rake, right? And you didn't have to worry about how to find them and manage them and all that kind of stuff. Your agent is your intermediary to that kind of agentic web.
Yeah. And like when you're on YouTube, like you're not thinking that YouTube is splitting the ad dollars uh with the users. Like you're not thinking about the financial part about it, but like that system is what allows YouTube to have such an advantage, is that like the best creators are publishing there first because like that's valuable to them. In the same way in the agent economy, you want to make sure there's a clear, transparent, really easy way for agents to get paid, and for agents to and for people to use those agents. And you just make the whole thing disappear behind the protocol.
Yep, that's right. What would be like the equivalent back in the day, Mike? Like of something, I don't know, like is there an equivalent where like a standard came out and all of a sudden it went from almost like almost like how it goes from like terminal, right? Where you have to
Yeah.
really be savvy to like a desktop or something like that.
I mean, that's a great example. You had MS DOS, right? You had like people would go in and they would have to like you'd have to go read in your manual, like type in this prompt to load the game that you want to play, and then the graphics would change from being a prompt to a video game. And then you had Mac came out, and so did Windows, and that gave everybody like the ability to use the technology through intuition instead of like engineering.
Dude, intuition instead of engineering is such a good way to say it. Like, I think that's one of the clear, like, I'm literally making a note of that. That's a great way to say that because most people, they have the intuition of like what needs to happen, right? But having the engineering to back that up is just a very kind of, most folks just don't have that available. So if we really want to make sure that these benefits can impact the most amount of people possible, so you don't have two classes, because what you don't want to have is like the equivalent of like everyone who has access to agents is like Homo sapiens, and if you don't, you're like a chimpanzee, right? And so if we can move people from needing to have a like a really solid background in engineering to having just like be able to use their intuition, that's how you win, right? I'd also say too, if anybody has any questions, like mostly we do these spaces just to just let everybody know kind of what we're working on, but also to answer questions. So if you have questions, feel free to come up and we can chat about it.
Yeah, and I invited Tufik up, who's one of the sponsors of Decentralized AI Day here coming up at ETH Denver. Rahila, you are always welcome up here as well. Rahila was actually one of the early folks I believe Stability Labs that created Stable Diffusion and kind of like all the technology behind like Midjourney and different tools like that. Like Rahila was one of the pioneers there. So if you want to come up, would always love to have you. Cool. It looks like Toro's here to ask a question. And Tufik, I've invited you in case you're able to come up. What's up, Toro?
Hey guys, it's me again. I have so many questions. This is so
Let's
Great.
go.
Well.
Actually, Toro, can I say this just before we jump into questions?
Yeah.
Because I think what Mike just said is important. Like, if anybody's planning on coming to the event, it is filling up super fast. Like, what is our capacity, Mike? Like 200 people or something? And I think we have almost.
I think about 200 to 300 can fit in the room at a time, but I think like almost 600 may have already signed up.
Right. And the way these events normally happen, it's just because you mentioned the event. I just want to make sure it's like, if you plan on coming to this event, you need to get on it right now. Like there'll probably be a point where like we have to let people in and out as people come and go. So like if you're planning on coming to the event, please take the time to like actually Alan or Patrick, I don't know who's running the spaces. If you can pin that at the top for anybody that's plans on coming in the next 2 weeks. So Toro, sorry, go right ahead. Just want to make sure we didn't miss that.
Can you guys introduce a paid option for this, like a guaranteed? Because some of the other groups are offering like a $29 guaranteed seat. So that could be a nice. I don't know if that's logistically you can do that or not.
I don't know. We can talk to Gina about that. I mean, in general, we just don't want to make it.
You want to have like as many people probably.
Well, no, more than that, it's like we just don't. When we approach this stuff, we're always going like, well, we try to avoid like, oh, people with money get it, people with money don't get it. They don't have the funds to do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's also why we do these events not as like in ETH Denver. We do it as like a side event. So if you're like, because those events, like these conferences are expensive, we want to make sure that these tools are available to everyone. So I think it's a great suggestion. We'll look into it because I mean, here's the funny thing, like Toro, the event that we did in Salt Lake City in October, this is how fast it's moving. So I mentioned this before when David was on the show a couple of weeks ago, where like the first decentralized AI like get together was like 50 people in Austin, right? Fast forward to October, we hold an event and maybe a couple hundred people showed up. between October and now, we're probably going to get a couple thousand. So like that's how fast this is moving. But we got to figure out new and better ways to do it. I think that's a good point. Sorry, but please go ahead, Tora, with your question.
So it sounds incredible what you guys are suggesting about a personal agent. I'm going to give you a super real life example. And my question is when WEN, right? Am I able to start using something like that? I have an IRL business, and my social media manager, who simply manages Instagram, just put in a notice. Her workload is minimal, right? So now I'm scratching my head. Do I want to save that money and create an automation, which would be, and I'm not a dev. Like I have multiple jobs. I'm just a person, entrepreneur, investor, whatever. So I'm looking at all these tools and trying to put together Chat GPT thing through Zapier or one of those tools, right? It connected to Canva AI and maybe help me generate images, something to help me manage social media, which is still going to require quite a human touch because our business is very organic, unique, whatever, right? We can't have the automatic robotic messaging. But from what you're saying, if I had a personal agent, even if I had to spend 6 months training it, it could help me find the tools that could help me replace my social media manager, which is not a rocket science, it's just a few posts a week.
Well, it's both, Toro. So what I mean by that is like, okay, number one, an engineer who does come in and they've spent a ton of time perfecting an Instagram agent. You tell your agent, Toro, like, hey, I need somebody to manage my Instagram. And it goes, great, I found you 3 options. Here's the one I recommend. Would you like to look at all 3? And it's like, cool, this one is $5 a month. You click buy and now it's managed. Like, so it will go out. It's almost, think about it like our buddy calls it like, it's almost like Tinder for agents.
Yeah. Okay.
Where your singular agent goes out and evaluates all the agents it can find in the network, looks at trust scores and all stuff like that, brings you back options that you can hire. Or if you put in the time and you build a really good agent, you can monetize it. If you put it on the Think protocol, now other agents can find it as well. Another way to think about it is almost like, imagine like LinkedIn for agents or something like that, except instead of just like trying to sell each other stuff, you could actually buy their services. So you think about your personal agent as like a matchmaker where you can either help that agent get really good at something and then monetize your agent, or it can just go out and it can source the agents you need to solve particular problems. Does that make sense? I don't know, Mike,
so still relying on others building out tools, for instance, managing Instagram or whatever. Like it's possible.
Or you can do it.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is like my agent, I'm building an agent where like my background is on like kind of marketing and creative, right? And so I'm taking like all of the greatest like creative writers in the space, Bill Bernbach, Ogilvy, people like that. And I'm building an agent to help you write like super effective, like creative for campaigns. Mm-hmm. So like, let's say you're trying to, help your Instagram. Like you're like, man, my copy's falling flat. All of a sudden my agent could pop in, help you solve problems. And maybe it's like, whatever, 25 cents a day or something like that. Right. So I not only built the agent for myself, I also, because I'm using a shared standard, put it out there that other people can tap in and use it as well. And I can either monetize or not.
I understand.
Does that make sense?
I understand.
Yeah, so you can do both with your personal agent.
When are we going to have our personal agents?
Well, the protocol is launching very soon. Oh, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, the personal agents are going to be coming out in the weeks following the protocol launch. So essentially, like timelines are tokens start going out when the exchanges list. That's kind of a process where, you kind of line up and that gets determined. So, and we don't get to really tell you very much in advance, but that's under active, that's happening.
By the end of March, that's what you guys said.
We're definitely aiming for that.
Okay.
The exchanges kind of decide when the listing lines up, right? Because like, just for instance, right, like what is it? Like Uniswap just announced their tokens, Doodles announced their tokens. They've all been lining up with the exchanges for when the exchanges are like, hey, it's time to go. Okay. So we're working, that's kind of like a thing that you work around just to make sure that it happens at the right time. And then, soon after that, you're going to be able to, all the dev docs will actually be out before then. So you're going to start to see these think agents that developers are creating, and your personal agent will be in the week, few weeks following that. When you're releasing these kind of protocols, it's really important to kind of give a week to a couple weeks between things so that you can solidify them and move the protocol forward. So yeah, we're looking at, I would expect a personal agent in the April, early May timeframe.
Cool. And then we'll be able to see what it does at the conference, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, that's right. And Toro, this is also why, for the people that kind of really understand the Futureverse kind of ecosystem, all those tools like text to 3D build, and like if you go look at their ecosystem, Murmur Matrix, things like that, those are all, think about those as all being agents accessible to you right out of the gate, right? So what we're doing behind the scenes, like when Mike says, I was meeting with these teams from these places like Render and Plus like that, it's so that they can get their agents ready to be in this ecosystem as fast as possible. Because what you don't want, it's almost like launching an app store and there's like no apps there.
Got it.
So that's also something we're doing is, like when we say, like it's pretty easy. Like if you squint and look at like a lot of our announcements, you can start to figure out who we're working with and who is getting ready to have agents in that ecosystem, right? Yeah, and so what they're trying to do is we're also helping them get onboarded at the same time so that day one, their agents are available to people.
It's amazing. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and all the documentation's coming. And like I said, it's all like all of our stuff is open source and decentralized and all that kind of fun stuff. And you'll be able to dig into the dev docs really, really soon. I mean, even the clip I was just reading you from is us finishing up all the docs so that we can get them out there.
Are you guys releasing a second part of a white paper that we're expecting? And if so, when is that going to be?
Yep. It's coming soon.
Okay.
Mike, you want to talk
There's so
about
many pieces.
the process?
Yeah. Okay, so if you've ever like been in a company where like you've got project managers and Gantt charts, like coming into the Web3 world, and we're about to have Tufik up here who can like probably shed some light on some of the like legal world that we're in, because Tufik works with a bunch of folks and he's one of the sponsors of Decentralized AI Day. But things are very complicated, and there's a lot of reasons why people have to be general about timelines and things like that, is because not everything's in your control. So we're working as fast as we can to get all the pieces aligned, the technical pieces, the partnership pieces, right? Because it means that all the partners need to be delivering the legal, like in a decentralized world, there's a lot of stakeholders like exchanges and people that kind of set these things up. So we're moving fast, and kind of that that general timeline of March or maybe early April is kind of the right timeline.
But if you're at the event, Toro, and you come say hi, you'll be able to see some of the really cool stuff that we're excited about. There'll also be like people on stage with us at the event that will be talking about the things that they're going to be doing on the Think protocol as well.
Tufik, great to meet you. It's good to have you up here. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, what's up, guys? Name is Tufik. I'm a lawyer and managing partner at a law firm that does crypto, and focusing on a lot of the work that we're doing now is in DEI. So excited to be here, excited to chat kind of what's happening in the space, and ask any questions.
I love it. I would love if you, like you and I believe this is the first time we've talked. Is that right?
We talked in Salt Lake briefly.
That's you. Yes. Sick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Me.
I'm stoked about this. Okay, cool. So I actually do know you fairly well then. What do you see happening right here, right now? Like what's your read on this? You're a professional. You see a lot of different projects. Like you even have folks like 1Password and like other massive companies that you work with, it looks like from your website. Like what's going on?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I think one thing that I'm kind of really concentrating on is, how does decentralization win in, the AI race, and how do we make sure that, AI is aligned with humanity, as that's going to be extremely key. I think, the challenges that we're going to face with centralized AI is going to be extremely massive. And, we're probably, if DeepSeek put a nice kind of kink in the armor of the oligarchy in recent weeks, but I think that if we allow for centralized AI to win, we may be seeing some of the largest wealth transfers in human history. And I think that, if people don't believe that that's the case, you only have to look at the historical record of, these companies and the way in which they behave to show that they will not care when it comes to fully automating your job. And it will be a slow burn, right? Because as we get more of these tools, we're going to experience, hyper productivity. And a lot of us are already experiencing that until we reach kind of what is coined as the frontier of automation. And then once the frontier of automation comes and your job is fully automated, then your productivity totally collapses. And, some case in points here is, Facebook, for example, was either, complacent or, turned a blind eye on what was happening in Burma during a Rohingya crisis, which is an ethnic kind of minority of Muslims that live in Rohingya. And, they actually, because their main, goal as a business was to increase user engagement, they actually, overshared right-wing or extreme views on Facebook, which led to, violent attacks upon the Rohingya people in that instance. And we see it as well with, Tesla and Uber, effectively attempting to get rid of, truck drivers and Uber drivers, respectively, from their jobs in the technology that they're trying to build. Because obviously those are huge costs and big opportunities to them. So the key thing for me these days is, how do we build a decentralized framework that allows for decentralization to actually compete toe to toe with, with the centralized players? And that's kind of been my main focus these days, is really trying to build out a legal and structural framework for DAOs to be able to manage, AI and AI agents, in a manner that is comparable with centralized corporations.
I love this so much. Can you talk about the frameworks at all? Like, is this a discussion we can have openly here?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, of course. Like, I think one thing that we see currently is that we take a lot of the institutions that we have in our real world for granted, right? You want to start a corporation, you have a variety of different things around you that help you do that fairly seamlessly, right? You have, a Business Corporations Act, you have the corporate registrar, you have lawyers, accountants, bookkeepers, payroll guys, you have, banks, and you have kind of a custom and process in which you can set up a company fairly easily. Now, erase all of that and tell someone to do the same thing. It's infinitely hard, right? So first and foremost, we have to build out what is the governing structure of the manner in which, we're going to manage these agents. And Mike, I read your white paper and I was really inspired, and I think it toes in line with some of the research that I was doing, because let's break it down very simply. What is law? Like, law is an intersubjective reality, right? Like, it does not exist except in our collective brains. But because it exists in our collective brains, it allows us to cooperate. And that's what humanity's really good at, is cooperation, right? That's actually what makes us, the successful species that we are. But without those intersubjective realities, and that goes from nation states to laws to religions to anything else that we find common kind of norms on, we wouldn't be able to cooperate together, right? Like an easy example is when you stop at a red light, you stop at a red light and you go on green because you know on the other side of the road someone's going to do that, right? There's nothing physically stopping you from going through a red light, but you stop at a red light, right? And the problem with our current kind of legal structures and, you know, our intersubjective realities in general is that they will only apply to humans. And this is where I think what you were proposing was so interesting, because we need a human and computer intersubjective reality, right? Mm-hmm. In which can live, you know, within the two worlds, because the only way you can regulate and control, or at least, you know, nudge AI in any way is by regulating and controlling the humans, right? But we know that that's going to be, a failed kind of process, not only internally in countries, but also, you know, once you add like a geopolitical layer to it. So having that kind of human to computer intersubjective reality, I think is going to be like, you know, one of the main game changers that we will need to adopt there. And we need to be able to use, I would say, the power of the blockchain to be able to, you know, effectively, govern and manage ourselves accordingly. And I think this is where, you know, tokens and incentives and disincentive mechanisms are going to be extremely key for us to be able to like figure out, you know, how can we actually get folks to manage and align together in a trustless environment. And that could be, you know, in many ways, and there's a couple of ways I'm exploring. One is simply, before a proposal, you would need to stake a commensurate amount of tokens that may be slashed if you're a bad actor, and you get rewarded if you're good, to even kind of building kind of decision-making predictive markets. There's a lot of ideas out there, but I'm really kind of in the process of working out a framework. And, you know, like any client that comes through my door, like it's kind of like a guinea pig for me, where we get to kind of test out and see, you know, what will work in reality.
So just so everybody sees this, right? Like this is literally how the world works, is that there are people out there at the edge of their field, right? Like Tufik is at the edge of the legal field, to where probably my guess would be that you've got past colleagues that are like, what are you doing out there doing blockchain and AI? And like, that feels like a pioneer space, or maybe even worse, that feels like you're outside of the norm. Is that a thing that happens to you?
Yeah, like maybe like a quick history. Like I'm from Lebanon originally, and you know I got into crypto in 2014 because of the, you know, historical situation in Lebanon with hyperinflation, corrupt banks, you know, even more corrupt governments, and where folks, you know, had their life savings obliterated. So, you know, when I realized I can be a lawyer in crypto, you know, I was all in. But the whole way, especially in 2018, like people were laughing at me. People were saying, "What the hell are you doing? This is nonsense. Go back to getting a regular job." And you know, like I was a young guy. I was obviously impressionable, and I worried, but I believed, right? Like I saw what it could do in Lebanon, and I believed in the power of owning your own, you know, financial future. And, you know, that let me, you know, push forward. But, you know, the stuff that I do, like my former colleagues, it's completely out of scope for what they're trying to understand, because what I'm trying to do is kind of create a merged legal and code reality in which we can kind of operate in a manner where we allow for both humans and agents to use the example of the red light and green light, for us to equally stop at a red light and green light and not need a human to stop the agent at a red light, so to speak.
And so you talking there about law and code, and how like there needs to be more code involved. Like it could not be more prescient to what's happening with agents, is because like the world's speeding up, right? Like, and social norms are being obliterated, right? Like you see from both sides, all the conflict around, well, you're not doing things according to norms. Well, the legal system can't keep up even with the most high profile public controversies, right? Like at this point in time, the need to actually move things from like trusting that the legal system is going to keep up to, hey, actually I can keep my business, myself, and my interests safe through cryptography is actually proving to be a winning business combination. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, and not only are the laws slow, but they're wrong, right? The way that AI is being regulated, it's being regulated as a kind of, in a similar way to, websites are being regulated, in the sense that we need to have the ability to consent, and then, you have certain kind of, limitations on them. We have the AI Act that just came through, which is attempting to do that, obviously, very regulatory heavy. But the principle is that we're still treating it like a consumer product, right? But I think if we reach kind of, some form of super intelligence, right, this is no longer a consumer product, right? This is the new land of the future. This is the new era of the future, right? And that needs to be able to be accessible for all. Right. So, there's many ways in which this can happen, and depending on who wins out on the tech race here, it will change. But if there was kind of, someone who reached, this super intelligence first, that super intelligence would need to be democratized and accessible to all. And for us to be able to build, proprietary stuff on top of that, right? Piggybacking off of your open core model. But that's what really needs to happen. We have to completely change our framework around property, and how we kind of define what this really is, because this is absolutely game changing. Like this is one of those turn on dime moments in history that we are experiencing right now, right? And what we do now will echo through eternity. And the problem that I see is that decentralized AI is losing. We're not winning this race as it currently stands. So we need to figure out how to win this race. And that's really what I'm trying to build, at least from the legal and structuring side, is how to make it as easy and simple and actually beneficial as possible for folks to be able to live by the principles of decentralized AI, and for us to all reap the benefits from it.
I will challenge a thing that you said there, that we're behind, and the reason that I'm going to challenge that is because DeepSeek, Llama, all of the underlying technology that's here, the open source models are catching up to what was possible in a closed source world. And what we just saw happen with DeepSeek and kind of the resetting of NVIDIA's stock price actually has us in a spot where even the pioneering frontier labs are in a spot where they're having to embrace open source. And I think this is our opportunity to win or lose. I don't think that we're behind, and I think there's actually way more hope today than there was a year ago. We're not in a spot where our backs are against the wall, but exactly what you're talking about, which is how do we actually write the smart contracts in a way that those smart contracts align incentives for people to both produce and consume AI in a win-win type of a network. Is that a good way to say it?
100%. 100%. That's what we have to do. And the power that we have in this that the other guys don't have is that we have the power of the token, right? And the token can be an extremely powerful mechanism to align incentives here. But I do agree with you on the DeepSeek stuff. It definitely has been a huge win for open source and a huge win kind of for our camp. But I'm not calling. I'm still kind of thinking through it as well, because then where does the power shift, right, from these open source models, right? And does the power shift to a developer? Does it power shift to kind of the agent app store, if you will? And how do we ensure that whatever are those kind of confluences of power, which in effect will allow for potential abuse of power? How do we ensure that those things are kept aligned with broader humanity? So That's really where I'm looking at it from. And I'm really concentrated really on the nuts and bolts of it, right? For example, we're partnering with Decent DAO, which is a DAO management solution, to build a merged legal and code product where you'll be able to kind of completely manage your DAO similar to any other type of payroll or corporate management software, in which you're kind of just like, using a front end UX, being able to punch in a variety of aspects. You want to, put some money into a grant DAO, pay a couple of contributors, et cetera, and how to do that on chain, fast and legal. That's really kind of the goal that we're working on.
That's cool. Can I do a thought experiment here? And like I'm not a lawyer here, but I'm going to make some claims, and I'd love for you to poke some holes in it. Does that sound good?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I think that the Bill of Rights in the American Constitution has set a standard for what an individual is and how that individual can operate and how it's free from to do things within the system. And I think that definition by itself has been one of the biggest innovations in governance in the last ever. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, like in the governance of the individual, right? Yeah, for sure. Now,
so what I would say is defining that for an agent in code is the thing that I've been focused on for that reason, is that when we can get a standard for this is an agent, this is how agents can interact with each other. We use cryptography to guarantee this agent's rights. And we also give a framework for like in the Constitution, it talks about how the interstate commerce can't be messed with, right? Like inter-agent commerce can't be messed with, for example. Like these are I think this is literally what we're talking about when we talk about the Think Agent standard is what is the Bill of Rights for agents? I'd love to hear you go off on that.
Yeah, for sure. And I've had many debates about this. So the way I look at it is I cannot have hubris to believe that, me or anyone else from this current vantage point is going to be able to build kind of, the constitutional framework for AI agents in the ways in which they interrelate with and interact with humanity. What I think is more important is how do you build institutions that have a sufficient amount of self-correcting mechanisms, which allow them to be malleable enough while steady and stable enough to iterate and change over time, right? You bring up the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution is a good example, right? Because the U.S. Constitution has an amendment provision, right? It's hard, but you can still amend, and it's still a living tree, as we say in law, of a document, right? The contrary is the Bible, right? The Bible is infallible, right? So if the Ten Commandments says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's slave, you gotta, you can't really amend that section of the Ten Commandments. You're kind of stuck with it, right? So, you can reinterpret it and all this jazz, but that's not going to be sufficient here, in our future, computer to human reality. So for me, it's like, how do you build the institution that actually, allows for this, setup to occur, where we can kind of iterate and improve and on what is kind of the governing rules between us and the AI over time, right?
Yes.
And maybe to put another example for this, just so it really hits people home here, is one institution that I think really had strong self-correcting mechanisms and a lot of good incentives was, the educational institutions, right? But not in its current iteration, but I would say back in the day, right? The age of enlightenment, it wasn't really an age of enlightenment. It was kind of an age of us not being ignorant, right? And we were able to, prior to that, if it was in the Bible, that was the word of God and you had to listen to it. If God didn't talk about it, it wasn't that important. So that stifled that norm, that intersubjective reality stifled I would say, any type of scientific progress. But then the scientific community started actually working together within the Age of Enlightenment. They actually started asking questions, right? They started looking at the world and not looking at it through the lens of the Bible, but they started using kind of methodology, like the scientific method, to study what's going on in the world. And in that mechanism, you had two things. You had, a cooperative environment where everyone was actually sharing ideas, and they were incentivized through, the ability to share ideas, to seek truth collectively, right? To create, new innovations and knowledge, but also you're also incentivized to prove other people wrong in a competitive sense, right? So, for example, you don't win the Nobel Prize for reaffirming the theory of relativity. You win the Nobel Prize for dismissing it, right? Or proving it wrong. So this kind of institution here, built around like a similar principle to the scientific method, I think is kind of a good example of how we can build an ecosystem, like a normative structure for us to actually not only have a framework to manage AI today, but to have it to be malleable and nimble enough so we can, effectively manage, our relation with the AI for the next 1,000 years, right?
Totally. And we have a few more minutes left. So if anybody has any questions, if you have questions about any of the legal stuff, about Think, come on up to the stage, like proposed. Tufik, while we're waiting for those questions to come up, what you're saying here is so relevant, because we're literally creating a new society right now. We're creating a society in which humans aren't the only contributors to work that are generating new ideas. I think Microsoft just announced 10% layoffs of their kind of key management positions. I think that we saw yesterday that job postings for software engineers are down 70%. So we're actually seeing the jobs that are closest, that are the earliest to be used, to have AI used for them, are having massive implications. And so we are in a sea change where kind of you're bringing up the Enlightenment, and Venice is a great example of this, is where I wanted to go, is that people here are probably familiar. We've been talking about Venice.ai, which is a decentralized AI system that moves kind of gets rid of censorship, and it moves the data to being on your browser, on your machine. And so the reason that there's a great essay, though, that Eric Voorhees had written about that, about why Venice, the city state, was such a big deal in Europe, because it was basically at a time of change taking place, where the power of kind of the existing systems, aka the church and kings, were starting to change, and individuals could actually become merchants and could actually set up these vast trading empires. And I think there's a lot of it's very similar right now, is that AI agents actually have the ability to compete head to head with some of the biggest corporations in the world. And the question is, well, how do you organize the world when there's not corporations that are easy to organize around?
Yeah, and it's a good example. And I think the key thing is that we're going to get rid of bullshit jobs, right? And I think that's going to be the big value unlock for us. And it's kind of symbiotic with AI, right? It's the AI will actually allow us to move into a new role in society, a new role that I think is going to be, more in line with our humanity, right? And who we are as individuals. I always say, what is the comparative advantage that we have over the AI, is that we will have a carbon-based body, right? And we will have a body that feels, that has a phenomenology, and that's where our strength's going to come, right? And our strength's going to come from the fact that we are going to be social creatures. So I think that's going to allow us to kind of grow into this new role where we're more embodied and we're more societal, right? And I think, from all the statistics that we have currently around ADHD, anxiety, loneliness, and everything that's going on in society right now, it's really because in 300 years, mark my words, people will be laughing at us saying that we thought we were robots, right? Because we attempted to over-optimize, over-output ourselves into just becoming these extremely efficient machines, but we're not. right? So I think this is where we come back to what we really are and re-find our sapienness. And in that, we turn into a role in which we are the governors, right? We are the governors of the AI. And that's kind of a new role there in which, I envision for humanity. And I think that we're going to be able to then also be able to do stuff that we really kind of care about, and I think care jobs and other types of jobs, experience jobs, I think are going to be kind of the jobs of the future, much more embodied and less cerebral.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as we're wrapping this up, Jesse, if you have anything you want to interject, feel free to jump in here. But my main takeaway here is like for people to understand that like this is a movement of dozens and dozens of projects and companies, and then you think about like service providers like Tufik that's coming in and actually innovating and helping develop new products that solve these problems. Like we are in a space in which everything's changing, and you kind of have to start to say like, okay, well, how am I going to change, right? Like, how am I going to adapt in this world? And the thing that I know that's important to me is like, I'm going to find people that align with my values that I think are capable of building this new world. And so I'm in the process of being part of trying to be as close to the center of that and help make these pieces come together, probably in the same way that like, the early founding fathers were like, hey, like we see an end to this, like being part of an empire thing. We're going to actually have to organize and we're going to have to put together some rules here. And it took a while to go from the Declaration of Independence to the Constitutional Congress to enacting the Constitution to winning the Revolutionary War. Or I guess those were probably reversed order, but those things all had to happen. And we are in that process. And so like the people that are like, hey, I'm going to be there and be part of this are the people that are likely going to be building the future that we're all going to be living in. And I'm just excited, Tufik, to get to follow up. It was good to meet you in Salt Lake City a few months ago. It'll be good to see you in Denver, and I'm looking forward to everybody else.
Likewise, man. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Jesse, you got anything to close, or should I just close us out?
No, close us out. Excited. I'm ready for Denver, and there's a lot that has to happen between now and then. But I think we're gonna pull it off.
Yeah, hell yeah, we are. And good, Rahila, looking forward to seeing you. Thanks for everybody for showing up every week. And if you have any things that you want to hear more about, feel free to reach out. I've opened up my DM, so if you were hitting me before and it was just hitting a doesn't accept, I try to keep up with all those things. I can't always respond to everybody because things get buried. But as we get that input, we start to put it together. I also met up with kind of the early community members that helped us like just get started with Think in the first place today. And we're talking about how to start getting some like groups of communities, especially folks that have been involved in Futureverse and Altered State Machine and Think and 6079 and Morpheus, starting to get more community to community interaction happening here. So if you have thoughts and opinions on that, feel free to ping me as well. And other than that, we will see y'all next week.
Cheers, guys.
Peace out. Cheers.